So we were sitting there, and the assistant chief had started asking me questions. Because do you realize how long you were down? And I said, I have no idea about anything. I'm pretty fuzzy. He said you were down a minimum of 20 minutes, and and I was like 20 minutes. He goes, you were gone. And they called me at the scene. They said there's nothing more they could do, so they buttoned me up and sent me off to the hospital. And I went, whoa. And they said when they arrived to me, it was kind of a mix up because the 911 call had initially been a motorist in distress instead of a code. And so it took him over 10 minutes to get to me. And that's why the CPR happened for so long, because it took the fire department forever. And that day, that's the fire department was on like a training day. So they weren't answering calls anyway, unless it was a serious one. So when they hear the motorist in distress, they just ignored the call until they got the tone that said there was a code, which was after about 10 or 12 minutes. I'm starting to figure it out that I'm like, wow, that's a long time, 20 minutes. And he says to me, what was it like? And I hadn't really had any profound thought or experience about it. Like I say, I was in the ICU. I woke up kind of in a dreamy state, real confused as to why I was there. But here I am, and I shut my eyes. And the only thing I can say is that it had to do with that electric feeling that I got in the car when I was in the same exact location as the week prior. But when I shut my eyes, it was like an IMAX theater. It was like an IMAX movie going on in my head, and it's still in my head now. It never's left. And it's 3D, and it's perfect color and no sound, but it's perfect color, and it's really, really crystal clear. And so I start to describe this to them with my eyes shut. I said, well, I'm looking down, and I'm somehow or another I'm on a pole, this light pole that I had seen through my wife's window. And I'm on this pole, and I'm looking down, and I'm facing towards the south. I recognize that a mountain in the south called Santan Mountain. And I said, I'm looking to the south, I'm on this pole, and I'm looking straight down, and I see a pile of blue people that are on a man, and I see feet moving back and forth like that. And I realize that it's me because I see my feet. And I'm next to my car, and the blue people are on me. There's a police car on the other side of my vehicle, and another one in not quite in front, but in the intersection. They're sort of blocking traffic, and there's a fire engine in front of my vehicle with the letters E and the numbers 256 on it. I said, and I told him that, and then I said, there's an ambulance with M252 on it. And I'm just describing this. I'm describing where the cars are parked, where the fire truck is parked, where the ambulance is parked. And I said across the street, there's people on the sidewalk that are kind of standing there clustered, watching what's going on. And then I open my eyes and I look up, and I said, and I see a white envelope. And I held my fingers up like that. I just see a white envelope. It's next to all the blue people, but it's sort of like trash. It's like a piece of just a piece. It's sort of kind of in the wind, It's sort of going like that. It's like somebody had thrown a wrapper away. And that's when they all went, "What?" And the man who had met me at the door, who's the paramedic, he said, "Come with us." And we walked around into the garage, and there was a fire truck that said E256 on it. And I went, whoa. And my wife said, "Did you say E256?" I went, "Yeah." And I look, and it's in there. It's still in my head today. And I'm literally looking at this fire truck with this E256 on it. And there's an ambulance there, but it said M256 on it. And I said, "No, the ambulance said 252. I'm sure of it because I'm looking at it." And they're looking at me like, "Are you kidding me?" And that's when they explained the mistake in the call that happened, that initially it was a distress call. So they were training, so they didn't roll their engine, but an engine and an ambulance from a far northern part of the town was called. And so they were on their way. And that's why it was, they were on their way. But after the period of time that the police officers were doing all those compressions, they pushed what's called a code tone on their microphone, and everybody listens now. And so that's when that station that I was standing in, they said, we heard the tone of a code, and they said, hey, we're right here. And so that's why they rolled across the street immediately after about 10 or 12 minutes with their engine, but the ambulance from the other department was on its way. So that's why when I said M252, I had described the other station's ambulance. And then I had described the station number 6's engine. And I would have known that because I had no idea how these numbers work anyway. But the fact that I described the other engine and the two separate locations trucks, they were looking at me like there's no way you could do that. But I had described them. Then the paramedic asked me, he said, how's your shoulder? And I went, well, this one's artificial. He goes, no, the other one. And I felt it, and I'm like, ow, it hurts. And he says, it ought to. He pulled out of his engine, the engine with E256 on it, a paramedic's bag, and he opened it up. And he pulls a little tiny green Makita drill out. He says, I drilled you with this. Whiz, whiz. And I went, what? He goes, dude, your bounce house was flat. You are a corpse. I got nothing. I got to get an IV in you. And so they drill into the bone marrow, into your shoulder. And also, I found out later, they'll also do one in your ankle. But this, they drilled right into my bone, the humerus bone, into the bone marrow. And that's where they insert a needle to get to a blood source for the IV, right? I didn't know anything about this. And so he throws me a paper that I had just described, and I catch it and I go, what's this? He goes, turn it over. And I turned it over, and it was the needle set and the tube that was coiled and the nozzle that goes into the IV. And it's called an IO. I wish I can't say the long name, but it's a long name, but it's called IO. And that was the tube that connects the bone to the IV. And I'm like, what'd you do with the paper? And he said, dude, he goes, you were a corpse. I got no time for litter laws. That's what he said. And he said, I just threw it. And I said, what I know about this? And I had my eyes open. I'm describing this thing. I said, what I know about this? And they said, there's no way. Kevin, you were gone. You were gone. They had shocked me several times, 5 or 6 times. I've got the tape of it where you can just see my heart's in this